Simon, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me.
Mike, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for the invitation. Let's put some fuel in the results engine, shall we?
Dude, I love it. First of all, thanks for playing on the metaphor. Second of all, really fired up about this conversation. We've been planning this for a while. I know we had a really fantastic conversation when we first connected, and dude, I'm looking forward to chopping it up. So, for people that don't know you and your story, give us the spark notes. You know who you are, where you coming from, what are you doing now?
Thanks. Yeah, I've been in the world of martial arts and self development and business for well over 20 years now. Went to law school back in the UK and had a moment right when I graduated when I realized that becoming a lawyer for the rest of my life was about the worst thing I could imagine. So I know the last time you and I spoke, Mike, I was joking about how I've made a great life out of saying no to a lot of good things
Yeah.
because that would have been a great career. But where my heart really was when I sat with it was traveling out to Japan, training with some of the teachers out there, deepening my understanding in that space. And that really led me on, I guess, a worldwide adventure. A lot of the guys that I rolled with out there were various military groups out there for, developing their combat efficiency. And that became my circle for a long time. So ended up traveling a lot, working as a consultant contractor, ended up here in the US eventually. Got married, got out of that, got divorced, got into business. So I've been for many years teaching guys self-defense combatives. That has really moved strongly into a space of working on mindset, working on personal development. The thing that gets you through combat better than anything else is your mind, how you think, and your ability to control your physiological response to stress, which of course in business is also a tremendously powerful weapon to have with you. Recently, 5 years ago or so, I got into the home services space, helped to build a local air conditioning company here in Tucson. We built it from about $15 million a year in rev up to about 50, at which point I decided my job was done. And now I'm moving back into the space of working with powerful and driven businessmen who are looking for a little bit more edge when it comes to their personal power, their ability to be present with people, and of course, their ability to not just build a great business, but not sacrifice their health, their vitality, and their relationships along the way, which of course is the cliche story for businessmen. You know, you get you work hard for years, build millions and millions of dollars in value, and then you lose half and have a heart attack. And
Yeah.
that is not a good end to a story. That's not the end to the story we want. So my goal is to help guys avoid that and actually build something of far more value.
Dude, I love that. I mean, that's true high performance. And I'm sure we'll get into that side of the conversation because I want to make sure we talk about everything else before we riff on that, because I could probably talk about that for hours. But I think this is where so many people get it wrong. And I think depending on the generation, it takes a different form in what it looks like publicly, right? But I think the easiest way to talk about it, just like you mentioned, right? Like the bank account may be full, but the health account isn't. Or like my buddy Jeff Fenster will call it his relationship bank account. Shout out to Jeff Fenster. This is being recorded April 27th. His book went live yesterday. So I think it'll be live. This will be live in like a week. If you haven't, go get Jeff's book. Shout out to Jeff. But these other accounts need to be filled too, right? And we're so focused on building the business. I think nowadays, the way that I see it, and I'm curious of your perspective on this, but the way I see it is everyone is we're all conditioned to say the right things, but then we don't actually execute the right way necessarily. And specifically within the context of this piece is we say that we're doing it for our family or for whatever. Like we say we're doing it for the thing, and then we sacrifice the thing for doing it. Right? Like we say we're building it for our family, but then we're so focused on the work that we sacrifice the family. And don't get me wrong, like there's a season, right? That's why I prefer work-life harmony and not balance. Like there's a season for all these things, but people forget to transition seasons. And then they just sacrifice all the things that they claimed it was all for in the first place in order to build the business. And that's just not high performance, in my opinion. Like it's cash rich, but like high performance poor. So I love it, dude.
That's such a great point, man. There are seasons of life, right? Absolutely. But there's also, there are seasons within a single day. I'll give you an example, right? Before I got divorced, one of the challenges that I faced was my ex would magically know exactly when I was about to walk into a sales presentation, exactly when I was about to talk to a customer, and somehow would be able to create some kind of drama and distraction within 10 minutes before that happened. Magically, she was psychic. But here's what I mean. It is so important when we're working that we find a way to build our environment and our relationships to support maximum performance around what we're doing in that moment, which also means when we're not working, we have to find ways to build our environment to create maximum performance around being in the relationship. So if I go to work and I'm thinking about the argument I had at home this morning, I'm doing neither effectively.
Yeah.
And likewise, when I come home and I'm with my wife or my partner or my kids, but I'm thinking about work, I'm not doing that effectively either. So there's so much value to my mind in being very clear in what am I doing right now and what do I want to get out of this moment, and living tremendously intentionally in every moment. Always know what your goal is in this space and what your maximum point of leverage on the future is from this moment. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you, because I think like the phrase that I always use is like be where your feet are. And I completely agree. Like intentionality solves most problems in pretty much all areas of life. Yet I think that even though we know these things in theory, many people still struggle with this presence, right? Like the mind runs rampant. The easiest example I'll use is when people say meditation doesn't work for them. They haven't found a way to make it work for them, right? But they're like, my brain just won't turn off. And in this example, it's like my brain is going to those other things. I'm not able to be present. For someone like that, how do you support that? Like how can what can they do to either train that or find their way back into the present moment?
That is such a great question. Let me touch on a couple of things. Number one, in Chinese medicine, there are five elements: wood, water, earth, metal, fire. Right, and there's something called the creative cycle and the destructive cycle. The destructive cycle is where fire destroys wood, wood destroys earth, and on and on. I
Mhm.
was speaking to a guy the other day, and he was at an event. We were at a business event. He was extremely focused. He was very fired up and passionate. He knew what he was going to do when he got home. But then he told me, "Hey, when I get home, I'm going to start playing whack-a-mole with all the other things I got to do." And that is the most common entrepreneurial experience: is my health, my relationship, my business, my spirituality. It's whack-a-mole. I got a problem with one, I go deal with that, and then another problem comes up to my left, I got to go deal with that. So I look at what is known as in Chinese medicine as the creative cycle, where each piece feeds the next piece. And I believe there's a tremendous amount of value in building your life so that each piece doesn't detract from the other, but actually adds to the other. And then communicating that to yourself and other people. So, for example, when a guy gets home from work and he's tired, but he knows he's got to get a 45-minute workout in, his wife typically will see that as taking more of the time and attention that she would like. But when your life is built properly to where these pieces actually support each other and you can communicate that, you can tell her that, hey, honey, I'm going to go work out for 45 minutes. Here's why. It's going to let me let go of the business day. It's going to let me get refocused. And when I get back, I'm going to be 10 times as energized and driven to connect with you as I would be otherwise. Likewise, spirituality feeds into our business. Likewise, business feeds into the lifestyle and experiences we can give to our kids. So, number one, I think there's a value in kind of looking at your life more holistically and how does each piece fit each other. Coming back to the moment of, hey, I want to play with my kids, but I'm thinking about the issue I just had with my CFO, that's very difficult. A lot of people have tried meditation, and meditation is really interesting in the West because meditation was brought to the West in the late 60s, early 70s by the hippie movement, right?
Mhm.
Flowers in the hair, peace and love. And so meditation was presented to the Western public from this sort of woo-woo, weird, soft, bell-bottom style approach.
Very
Here's
polarizing
the
word.
very, very polarizing, right? Here's the truth. And so a lot of very masculine driven men do not resonate with that. I
Yeah.
also think there's a problem across the entire personal development and spirituality space where it's become very feminized. And a lot of the language and the verbiage that we use is alienating to men.
Mm.
For example, if I talk about self love, it's tremendously important, but most men don't really kind of get behind what that even means. If I start talking about self respect instead, which is really an adjacent concept, most men will say, okay, how can I live my life to give myself maximum self respect every day? And now we're speaking the right language.
Yeah.
But I digress. Meditation originally comes from the warrior class of Asia, comes from the Kshatriya class of India, comes from the samurai of Japan. Why was it the warrior class that became so dedicated to the art of meditation? The reason is it helped them survive battle more effectively.
Hmm.
Meditation is an extremely masculine pursuit because meditation isn't just about sitting down and chilling out and breathing. For most of us, the mind does not want to be quiet. And our pain that we've been suppressing for however many years has an opportunity to be expressed in our meditation. Meditation is harder than cold plunges. It's harder than, laying on a bed of nails because everything that you didn't want to feel demands to be felt. And if you set the expectation that you do meditation, your mind's going to be quiet 10 minutes later, that's simply not true. After many, many years, you get better at dropping into a space of quietness. But
Yeah.
meditation is a fucking battle with your
Yeah.
mind and your heart and your soul. And anyone who sells it differently is lying to you. And when the expectation is set up wrong, the experience doesn't match the expectation. We think it's not working.
Yeah.
And the
Dude,
last piece I would say to answer your question, I know this is kind of a long answer,
you're
Mike.
good.
Most businessmen, we orientate very specifically out of the mind. Our existence exists in our own mind. And when we're in the mind, we don't really feel the body. We don't experience, our feet on the ground, our butt on the seat, the way the air is hitting our skin. These things are all part of feeling your body. And when you're in business, you should be using your mind because providership is a mental pursuit in our age. But when you're being with your partner or you're being with your kids, it's tremendously important that we learn to drop down out of our mind into our body. So we actually begin to feel the heart pumping blood. We begin to breathe in and out through our testicles. We feel our feet on the ground. And when you can get that sense of being in your body, you become very deeply entrenched into the living moment of now, which is where we want to be present with the people we care about.
Hmm. Dude, there's so many things popped up for me as you were sharing those pieces. Specifically around meditation. You like probably saw me gazing off and like really reflecting on one thing you said in particularly, which is like everything that you didn't want to feel demands to be felt when you're meditating. And I think that that's really interesting. And I think it's really true. Like the mind is ping ponging. And I think that is partly because the words are interesting to me, like what words we associate it with. Like me, the way I always think about things is like big data shows trends. I don't necessarily need to understand the science of why something works. But when the Ray Dalios of the world have been talking about transcendental meditation since the 70s, like they have what I want, I'll just do it. Like, shut up, don't be hard-headed, go. Um, but it is a very like magnetic word. You're either attracted to it or you're repelled from it. And my opinion is like, call it meditation, call it breathing, call it whatever the fuck you need to call it. Just do it because the science shows that it is very powerful. Hearing where it actually comes from is really interesting. And I almost like when I'm thinking about the mind running rampant, and I think about the masculine versus like the masculine being almost repelled from that word. I'm like, wow, well, the mind needs to be busy, and being busy is associated with toxic hustle, and neither of those things serve us. So if we could just attach a different association to it, we could do what we really need to do and actually experience what we really need to experience in that moment. Because it is harder than an ice bath. As confrontational as like 37-degree water is, dude, it's really challenging. It's also a muscle. And anyone who's tried to meditate for north of 10 to 15 minutes, like if you go for a 20-minute or more window, at least for me personally, I find like time goes faster after the 12th minute because you finally sit into it. So it very much is like that muscle. It's interesting.
Yeah, there's a phase in meditation, whatever style you do. I like Zen. I like Zazen, which is sitting Zen. I also enjoy Qigong because you're moving your body, or you're at least being in your body a lot more with Qigong. And there's a whole science behind that. It's not just sitting and breathing. You know, there's years and years of study into how you're moving energy around your body, where you're putting your focus, opening up different gates inside. But yeah, there's a point when you sit down, when your mind is busy, and it's not going to stop being busy, and the more you fight it, the worse it gets, right? The more you try to stop the flow of thoughts, the more you think about thinking, and
Don't
now
think
you're in
about
trouble.
pink elephants.
So the first stage of meditation is just sitting down, getting comfortable, you know, getting your spine straight over your hip bones and your sitting bones, and then just slowing down your breathing. And that's really all you need to work on, is just breathing. The first 12 minutes is just breath work. But then we experience what I call the drop, where you really drop down into something much deeper, and your consciousness starts to shift, and things do become very spacious and very quiet. Well, now we're getting into meditation. When you have a good meditation practice, I could list the benefits, but I'll give you an example. Most of us as men grew up wanting approval from everyone around us, because we believed that when I get approval, I'm liked, I'm loved, I'm safe, all these things. And that certainly is true when we're boys. A boy's job is literally to learn, study, stay alive, and listen to his parents. And so there's a natural, I think, hardwired impetus in children to want the approval of adults, because that's literally what keeps them alive.
Yeah.
When we move past childhood things and we become men, we have to put a lot of that aside. But a lot of our unconscious behavior is still years, decades later, designed to make the people around us happy at the cost of the results we want, and possibly at the cost of their happiness as well. When you meditate, you begin to catch these things in yourself. You begin to get just more tuned in to, let's call it, the subtle undercurrents of your motivations and your behaviors and what's driving your actions in the real world. And the more awareness we have of those things, the more you can say, okay, stop. This thing I'm about to say isn't really even anything I actually believe. I'm just saying it to placate this other person in my business. Let me come back to my body. Let me start to think about what I really want to say that's actually true, that's going to drive us into the future that I want to create based on my vision. That's the level of consciousness that I think drives the most powerful people in business, in athletics, in every other area of life. How deeply can they be in touch with their real self and live out of that?
The word that comes to mind is alignment. I've been
It's a great
talking,
word.
like I've been thinking about this a lot lately. We were talking about this before we press record, of like, are they your goals, or are they just goals that like Instagram told you to want, or your regional manager told you to want, but like there's no attachment to it? And I've been talking about alignment within this context. And the way that I've been thinking about it a lot lately is I think about like the lack of alignment and how much like that alpha male is going to be able to just rely on pure willpower and discipline, and like they'll get by to an extent, and they'll produce in alignment with that goal to an extent, but it will be nowhere near what they could because there's so much friction, right? Like it's jamming a square peg in a round hole. The gears aren't greased because there's no alignment, right? They're being just purely pushed, but they're not being pulled. It's all force, no power, whatever metaphor we want to use, right? But once we have the alignment, the wheel is greased, right? Like you're being pulled and pushed. And if you go without the alignment, you're going pure discipline, like you will burn out. It is inevitable. Not immediately, but definitely. Depending on how much you can endure, like you're not going to get as far as you could without it or with it, excuse me. But once you have that alignment, it allows you, like it opens up the peak performance window. It allows you to go way further because you're being pulled. Now you have the power, not just the force, right? Like I don't know, the end rant, but alignment is where it always comes back to for me.
I think that's a great point. What are you aligning when you talk about alignment?
For me, in that context, I'm talking about like these are client conversations. Like, what do people actually want? So in the
Yeah.
door-to-door space, it would be like the Golden Door Award, like the top 1%, right?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And by the way, that's a great target if it's actually their target. But the number of clients we
Mm.
had that were like, I want to have 130 solar installs because that was the target for that. And every industry has their own metrics, but like, dude, they actually didn't give a shit about that at all. Just their mentors told them to want that thing, but there was no attachment. And then the second we got truly aligned with what they actually want, their production went through the roof. You know what I mean?
You absolutely you hit the nail on the head there, Mike. And I work with people as well, and most people present what they want, but it's actually what they want to be seen wanting. I want to be seen wanting the Golden Door Award because
Yeah.
if people think I want that, it'll make me accepted into the group because they seem to want that too.
Yeah.
So there's a big difference between what you want to be seen wanting and what you actually want. Most people have no fucking clue what they actually want. No clue at all.
Yeah.
And even if they got close to it, they would deny it because a lot of times it's not what other people want and it's not what they think they should want. There's a lot of time that can be spent on your own, talking to yourself in the mirror, drilling down into what you actually want. And it can be a major surprise to a lot of people. I mean, we were talking earlier about how we all want to build a big business, but sometimes we look at it and decide, oh, hold on, I actually just want a great life for my family without all these problems. What if I just ran a smaller business at a better margin?
Yeah.
No, when I think about alignment as well, Mike, I I have a lot of fun with the word integrity because it gets thrown around a lot.
Yeah.
When I ask people what integrity means, and I think I probably use integrity much the same way you use alignment, but the way that people use the word integrity, if I say what does it mean, they'll say, "Oh, it means doing the right thing." Well, there's another word for that. That's morality. So it's not integrity. Okay, in that case, it means doing what you said you were going to do. Well, that's honor. That's not integrity. Disintegrate comes from the same root as integrity, right? Disintegrate means broken into its constituent pieces. So integrate could mean all the pieces brought together as one. And that's how I look at it. Not to get too esoteric, but there's a sect of Buddhism called Mikyo Buddhism, and they have something called the Sanmitsu, the three secrets. And the three secrets are meditation, mudra, and mantra. Meditation takes place in your mind. Mantra are the words and sounds you make with your mouth, and mudra are the particular positions you might make with your hands. Okay, so what it comes down to is what do you do with your mind, what do you do with your mouth, and what do you do with your hands? Said another way, thought, word, and deed in alignment. A lot of people have their deeds not aligned with their thoughts, or they think one thing but say something different. And another key, in my opinion, to peak performance and real power is doing a lot of self-analysis and work to get to the point where you're not afraid of saying, thinking, and doing that exact things that lead to your vision. And when you do that, I think life gets a hell of a lot easier.
Yeah. You don't have to put on a face. It's like
Don't have
truly
to put on
you.
a face. And if you like it, great. If you don't, great. Thanks for letting me know.
Yeah.
Let's all carry on.
Yeah. It's super interesting to me. It's like, and that kind of in a weird way helps segue to where I wanted the rest of our conversation to go, which is Well, I'll get there in a second, but what I'm thinking about as you're saying that is like, okay, well, it's the pursuit of who I can become ultimately. Like I always say, like, okay, I'm creating the man creates the business, right? I'm creating the man creates everything else in my life. It's who I become that can provide all of that. And even within the context of my business, like whether I do this forever or not, it's irrelevant to me. It is building this business. Who will I become in that process? And is that a fun journey to be on? Well, fun's probably the wrong word, but like, do I like the end result? Will I like who I become enduring that adversity? And that part's really interesting to me nowadays because I think about at least within the confines of like this entrepreneurial world that we're in right now, that where you and I both play this like large sandbox. I think about where it's going and like what I see happening in it. And there's two things that I'm really interested about specifically around your experience. Number one is the association and maybe like correlation between martial arts and business. And then number two is you mentioned you've brought up a lot of like warrior history type stuff. And I see a lot of that infused into the entrepreneurial world in like a very public, like it's always been there, I feel like, at least the principles in many ways, but like now there's a very public way like that it's happening, right? You see big name MMA fighters being very prominent in the entrepreneurial community. You see masterminds that are legitimately focused around self-development, personal development, and like literally like becoming hard to kill, right? Combat training, like all of these worlds are being very interwoven. Um, and I'm just curious, I'd like to steer the conversation that way. And I'm curious what you're seeing around that and what your thoughts around all of it are.
I think it's a great thing. I was actually talking to my group the other day. When I first started training in martial arts, I did want to understand the correlation between life and martial arts, and I wanted to use martial arts to learn more about how to live better. In fact, I just remembered recently, I think I was 16 years old and I'd read Miyamoto Musashi's Book of Five Rings. And I remember having post-it notes all over my wall, trying to understand the correlation between Musashi and how I could build a better life. I mean, at 16, that's how long I've been into this stuff. I do see this emerging into the business world. I think it's tremendously beneficial. I think that there's a correlation. I also know that a lot of guys are retiring from the sharp end of the tier one units, that SEALs, DevGru, all those groups. When you're a high achiever at that level in the military, it's only natural you become a high achiever in business. They just go together. The personality traits that make you tenacious and able to think outside of the box and just keep going, keep going, keep going. You know, those are the same traits. I think that you mentioned earlier about discipline, right? Discipline is something which in our current society is not focused on uh, almost at all. You know, people may have a little bit of discipline if they play football or sports or wrestling or do a martial art. Outside of that, the general public don't care about discipline one bit, to the point that they would run as far away from it as possible.
Yeah.
I think that discipline is a great set of training wheels for life. I think we all, as young men, 20s, 30s, should build our discipline, live a disciplined life. But like you said, it only goes so far. There's a shift that I've made recently, and it's one of the shifts that I like to share with guys that I work with. The shift is away from self expectation and towards self expression. So I'll say that again. The shift is away from self expectation and away towards self expression. The way that I look at it is when I have a goal and a thing I want to be, I put all this pressure on myself and discipline on myself, and it pushes from the outside of me to the inside, and it gets some results, but it also squeezes and smothers me. And as I've grown older, I start to want more expression, which is going into the core of me and starting to bring that out. So, back to the beginning of your question, building businesses, being an entrepreneur. I love business just like you love business. But when I work with people, I kind of don't give a rip in the big picture about business and money. I think some of us are on a life journey where building a business and being an entrepreneur is a part of our path. And it's an amazingly educational and I mean full of amazing experiences and growth. But it's not the end goal of our path, right? I'm 43. You're probably a little bit younger than me. There's going to come a day where I'm not here because I'll be dead. What I have to play with is a certain number of breaths between now and my last breath. And I want to help as many people and express myself and just have as much life as I can between now and then. And if part of that path is a business, let's build the best fucking business we can build. And for other people, it might be art or just being a great dad or, winning a fitness competition or just traveling the world and people watching. I've kind of gone away from a place where I want to judge people who have a different way of living their life from me. I think it's all just beautiful. And it's the harmony of, billions of souls on the planet all doing the thing they want to do. I do believe that every single one of us is living our perfect life right now. Whether you're rich or poor, whether you're in a great relationship or a bad relationship, healthy, unhealthy, that is exactly the life that you chose to build with your choices and your beliefs. So it's the perfect life for you. And I'd like us all to respect that. But if somebody would like to build something new, no time like the present.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a very empathetic way of putting that. And I think it's very true. Where my mind goes is think very aggressively. And my mind I would have used the words of like, they're living the life they deserve. Like you are exactly where you need to be. But that also then brings in an energy that insinuates that they don't want to be there, which very well may not be the case. And I really like how you put that, which is like, no, it is the perfect life for them. And should they want to change, then cool. Understand that that is where you deserve to be. And you're just a couple decisions away from changing it. But if that's where you want to be, like, let's fucking roll, dude. That's awesome.
If you wanted a six pack, if you really, really, truly in your soul wanted a six pack, you'd already have one.
Yep.
Or you'd be well on your way. If you're not doing the work or you're just playing around with wanting other people to think that you want that, you don't really want it.
Yeah.
And that's cool. Nobody can tell you what you should want. No one can tell you how you should live. We're all just playing around and doing our best with our own individual experience.
Comes back to that alignment piece, right? Like, do you actually want it? Or are you just saying that you want it because you feel like you are supposed to want it?
Yeah, and I use that in selling all the time, right? Customers will tell you they want a certain thing, they want a certain result, but then they're not willing to make the investment. So guess what? They don't really want it. I've been through a sales career in my past, and I went through a phase where I was a pretty hard seller. I liked it. I liked the fight. I liked the chase. I like the sense of getting one up and closing people. And then I reached a point where I realized that all I was doing was creating bad customers that didn't really want what I was giving them because I cajoled them into it. So more and more as I look at business, my favorite path now is high-end customers who don't really need what I have to offer, but would like to go down that path and play. And I have moved away from trying to sell, trying to close, trying to 2-point close or puppy takeaway close, all those things. If someone wants to do something in their life, they'll do it. And if they don't, maybe they want to do it later. Let me know. And that shift has really created a lot of peace in my life, Mike. because I don't have to be reliant on other people making the choices that I want them to make for my happiness.
Mm,
Whether they want to do business with me or not is great. I will always have the exact number of customers that I want. I'll always make the exact amount of money that I want, whether somebody else wants to do business with me or not. There's billions of people on the planet. So I'd rather just, next someone than keep chasing and chasing and chasing. Now, if you're in a commodity business or you're, mass market, it's kind of a different animal because the mass market, typically they're bad at making decisions. They need someone to help make a decision, which
yeah.
is why I like working with high end people. They don't need my help to make a decision. They don't need my help to decide what they want. They just decide what they want, and we either hang out or we don't.
Yeah, that's the balance, right? It's like, because I totally get what you're saying, and I agree. And I would the metaphor that I always use on enrollment conversations with our clients is like, my job on these calls is to help walk you up to the edge, but I'm not going to push you off. Like, I'll ask you the hard questions. I'll ask you the oh shit questions where I have to mute my phone because I'm like, oh my goodness, did I really just have the balls to ask him that? But like, that's the point of these conversations, right? Like, you want to get coddled, go buy your buddy a beer and save yourself thousands of dollars. Like, that's what that's for. But if you want to be asked the questions that no one else has the audacity to ask you, but the things you really need to be exploring, that's what this is for. And I will help you get there, but I will never push you off the edge. You have to jump and trust that we'll teach you how to fly. I'll guarantee that my team and I will be with you every step of the way in that process, but I will not push you off, because if I have to drag you through the starting line, we're going to have to drag you all the way through the finish line, assuming we even get that far and the rope don't break on the way. And it's going to be a waste of your money and both of our time. And I'm not willing to waste that energy for my team. It takes two to tango, but it is that fine line, right? Because if we genuinely believe in what we're doing, it is our obligation to do what we can to empower them to get to that decision. But it's like, it's not the convince, like, I won't convince anybody to work with me. I'll
No,
get them to that
no,
point where they can make that decision for themselves. But it's like, what is that? That's the line that we have to toe. And we need to get them to raise their hand. But if they don't raise their hand, I'm not taking their credit card. You know
that's
what I
such
mean?
a wise, especially when you have other clients that client's going to be around. Right?
Yeah.
Imagine you have a room full of truly, truly dedicated, hardworking dudes, right? And then you work so hard on your sales to convince some dude who doesn't really want to be in the room to come into the room. You just poisoned the room for
Yeah.
all your other customers because you wanted to win, you wanted to get a little extra money in your pocket. I think it's our duty as leaders, as coaches, to just be so clear in our own actions and how we approach every situation, and to provide whatever space it is, whether it's sales, marketing, self-growth, just provide the most impeccable space we possibly can for our people. Something I was thinking about in the shower, I think you might find this kind of interesting, Mike, because I think it's related. So many of us now do a lot of social media, right?
Yeah.
And you go on social media and you're told you've got 1.3 seconds to hook their attention, and you'd better make 3 points inside the next 8 seconds because people have really, really short attention spans. Well, I got thinking about that. The average person has a very short attention span, and if we want to get their attention, we have to speak fast, move fast, be very provocative. We have to pretend to be someone else to get their attention. Well, that's great if you want the average human being as a customer. You probably don't want that. I definitely do not want that. So you know what? I decided if someone has a 1 second attention span and they click past my video, see you later. Wasn't for you anyway. I would much rather speak a little slower and choose my words and make a point that really connects with my audience, because I don't want to put my audience in a box of, they're so dumb they have a 1 second attention span. Imagine starting a business with such contempt for your customers, right? If you want
Yeah.
great customers, speak great customers into your business. and show up in a way that you expect them to be great.
Yeah.
And so if you're treating them like children with ADHD, I think that's the customer we all deserve if we act that way.
Yeah. That's such a good way to think about it. And I think I mean, social has poisoned us in so many different ways. Instant gratification, like, I don't know the right easy way to say this in 2 words, but like completely devaluing things if they're not grandiose. Like the fact that we get like 500 views on a video and the default is like that's nothing is crazy when you actually think about it, right? It's like 500 people sat and watched what you created. And because there aren't a million, you think that it's not enough. Like, it's wild to actually think about that. Yet here we are battling these thoughts. And I think that's also the beauty of like having such a niche audience, working with really high level people, working in a very high ticket space, because all you need is one or two of those 500 people to be like, to strike a chord with what you're talking about and being like, let's roll. It's really interesting how the human mind and like how social media is played into it. But take the
Mike,
good with the bad, I guess.
I think that a lot of us who are dealing with quality customers, we have to reprogram ourselves away from the metrics that have been pushed on us with social media. If you're selling, a free with shipping survival penknife, you need millions of views to make that business model work.
Yeah.
One of the things I like about Instagram, right, and also TikTok, is I can get a video with 300 views, and man, what a compliment! 300 people gave my stupid little opinion a view. I mean, thank you. That's phenomenal, right?
Yeah.
But what I'll find is in 300 views, I'll get 15 saves and 8 shares. And that's what I want. I don't care how many
Yeah.
views I get. If 20 people saved my thing to watch it again later because it actually had some value to them, there are customers there. The other thing is, what I found is that people who like your content all the time are often not buyers. Real high quality buyers. This is something one of my mentors, Kevin Nations, shared with me recently. Real high quality buyers don't like your stuff. They just DM you. Real high quality buyers don't want to go through your 2-hour VSL and then, buy your $7 tripwire and then do another webinar. They just want to email you and say, hey, how can I hire you?
Yeah.
And just get it done. High quality customer behavior is almost the opposite of mass market customer behavior. And we can actually do ourselves and our business a massive disservice by treating high-end customers like low-end customers, because it just annoys them to go somewhere else.
Yeah. Dude, it's so interesting how people operate and like yeah, I just feel like social media has jaded so many people. And if we're not looking at the right metrics and we just look at how everyone else talks about social media, then we're going to just be really upset with ourselves because we only got 30 likes, but we could have 7 shares and saves.
Oh, so true. And there's so much business advice out there as well, right? I think one of the big dangers, the thing that really keeps a lot of people from growing well, is they see a piece of business advice that's working, a tactic or a strategy that's working incredibly well in another business, and they apply it, but it doesn't fit with their model. Every model is different, and you've really got to know your model and then take the pieces that work for your model.
Yeah.
I also, one of the things that I have learned about and really believe in now is I got to have a business model, right? I've also got to have a life model.
Yeah.
My life model should include things like how many hours per week or per day am I going to spend on my business? And then when I get, like recently, I'm helping out a mastermind group in Asia. I'm going to do it virtually, but just imagine he said, hey, Simon, fly out to Asia for this mastermind. Well, I got a kid and a girlfriend and some dogs here. That doesn't fit my life model.
Yeah.
But if I said yes to it, I violated my own model. And then
Mm,
I fucking deserve every consequence I get across the
yeah.
rest of my life because I wasn't clear on the purpose of my business, which is to support my life.
Hmm. Dude, 100%. It's like there are so many business models that work, but the one that works is the one that we work until it works. Right? You
Yes.
could do in the coaching world, you could do a launch model, you can do an evergreen like revolving door enrollment, you could do the low ticket with the upsells and the tripwires and all the funnel terminology. Like you can do all of these things. You can do virtual events and sell high ticket from them. It's like what fits you and which one are you gonna like is gonna be aligned enough that you put in the work until it works for you. Right. And it's so important. Like the number of people we think like back in the day, you used to need 10,000 Instagram followers to get the swipe up, which is now the link click. Right. And people used to look at it and be like, the number of people I knew running multi 7-figure businesses almost entirely out of Instagram that had less than like 2,000 followers is wild. And people don't think that. They're like, oh, but these influencers with hundreds of thousands of followers must like they must be rich. Like, no, they're broke. A lot of them are
Yeah.
broke. They don't know how to run businesses. They bought their followers. They did it through campaigns or whatever. Like, I could go generate 100,000 followers on Instagram, and they wouldn't care anything about what I do, and it would cost me a couple $1,000 to do it, but I could do it. Doesn't mean I have a business on the back end of it. So it
Not
brings
even
us down a whole
close.
different rabbit hole. But
Going down that rabbit hole a lot or a little bit. One of the things I see so commonly with entrepreneurs especially in their first 5 years, is trying model after model after model. But all they're doing is half building the model, giving up, moving on to the next model.
yep,
So one of the things which I think people would benefit from focusing on more is picking a model and working it until it creates cash flow. And then people will say, well, what if this model doesn't work? Here's the thing, right? If that model's working for other people, the model works.
yeah,
Your implementation of it doesn't work yet. So keep going. But the amount of entrepreneur time, which is wasted, changing model, changing model, changing model. You asked about martial arts. One of the things we used to joke about in Japan was that people would join the art, train and train and train, get better, get promoted, and then leave out of the blue. And what we used to say was people would stay in the art until the art demanded that they begin to change.
yeah,
Just like people stay in a relationship until the relationship demands that they begin to change and grow, usually. Well, I think people stay in a business model until the business model requires them to begin to grow. And
yep,
then it's just easier to start a new business model because even though I'm broke, hey, at least I get to show people that I'm an entrepreneur. I want the things I'm supposed to want, and I got the identity I'm supposed to have. You
yeah,
know, I'm not a broke artist. I'm just a broke entrepreneur. Same.
yeah.
Although a broke entrepreneur is like an artist who never paints anything.
It's true. It brings me back to the alignment question, right? Because I
Mm.
think so as you're saying that, I think back in a couple points in my career, and I think back of like what those moments demanded of me. And thankfully I was surrounded by the right people that pushed me towards the right questions. Like I think back in my software career, I hit a moment where the company that I was a part of acquired a couple different companies. They acquired a startup, and it very quickly became this thing where if I wanted to continue to grow within that organization, and I knew that I was only there to develop certain skills and like take time to build my businesses, but if I wanted to continue to grow and get to the management level that previously used to be like the business fork, now it required me to be such a high level engineer that I just was not willing to put in that energy. So for me, it helped me draw that line in the sand way earlier than I probably might have had that carrot still been dangled. right? I wasn't willing to grow into that person because it didn't fit the bigger vision. I didn't want to write better code. I didn't care about learning about new methodologies. I cared about building the soft skills, learning about people, and then eventually building my own thing. But if I didn't have that alignment and understand what I was there for in the first place, then I either would have left earlier or I would have kept chasing something that wasn't actually mine and then used all force, no power. Right. But I'm
Yeah, I think what
sure
you're
there are also probably examples where I hit that crossroads in certain areas and I flat out, I just like, dude, I probably bitched out and I probably wasn't willing to grow. And it like that could have been, if I had more alignment, I may have been able to endure until, persist until, and who knows what that could have generated for me. It's an interesting concept.
it is, and I think you've come right back to what we were talking about earlier. This idea of building a great life by saying no to most things.
Mm,
A lot of people have a really hard time saying no to things because they look great. Other people say they should say yes. They feel compelled to say yes because perhaps someone's been good to them or kind to them, or because they're so grateful for being offered the opportunity. Well, saying yes to an opportunity just because you're grateful it was offered doesn't mean it was a good opportunity that you should say yes
yeah.
to, right? So I think that high performance, which is what you've been asking me about, a big part of high performance is elimination of everything which is going to drive low performance. You cut away all the low performance, you're left with high performance, right? You cut away a role or a task in your business, or a piece of drama in your relationship. You start to cut all that away and clean it up. Eventually, you're left with neat, tidy, focused energy,
Yeah.
rather than being scattered across 1,000 different dimensions, which is most people's experience. Most people are so reactive to life that they just get spread so thin. When you start to learn how to respond to life in line with your vision and who you are, who you want to become, uh, you're almost obligated to say no to most things.
That's interesting. I like that. Simon, before I ask you the last question, where can people follow along? Where do you hang out on social, website? Plug away, my friend.
Yeah, the best way to contact me is probably Facebook, Simon Smart, or Instagram, Simon J Smart. I'm on there more than I really should be to have a healthy life, but that's part of the cost of trying to get my message to the right people. Or Simon at warriorprotocol.com is a good little email address for me. I'm going to be building out some different brands here pretty soon as I diversify some offerings. I'll be doing a little bit more focused around high performing businessmen who are either having some serious marriage challenges or who just want to tune up their relationship to avoid problems down the road. I do a lot around, a lot of people believe it takes two to tango in a marriage. What I found is that if we fix the man, we usually fix the marriage, because the man is the leader of the energy and the dynamic. We fix him, everything else starts to work. So that's where my focus is going to be for the next year, at least, I think. But yeah, anybody who has a question, or if there's something I can do to help or serve your life, your family, your company, I'm always happy to discuss those situations.
Perfect. Well, guys, all those will be linked up in the show notes. Get connected, show some love, reach out, all that fun stuff. Simon, going all the way back. I don't even know where to begin with your journey, but started in the UK, ended up in the States, doing a lot of consulting, a lot of work in mixed martial arts, growing home services companies, like this very eclectic and wildly impressive background, this entire window, all the way to where you're at right now. What's been the biggest lesson that you've learned that has yielded the most results and had the biggest impact on your life and in your business?
That is such a hard question to answer, my friend. I have been so blessed and so lucky to have so many experiences. I feel like I've lived 10 lifetimes just in one. So lucky. You know, the biggest tool that's helped me in my life is probably meditation, helping me to get really clear on who I am and what I want. And the last piece of that is, I believe that when we truly understand our role in a dynamic with another person, we understand what they provide, what we provide, what we're obligated to, what we're not, we can create really clean relationships with people. And that to me has been the most powerful thing. Understanding whether I'm the teacher or the student, the driver, or am I in the passenger seat, what is her responsibility, what is mine. Those things just clear up a lot of drama and chaos that we seem to get in our life otherwise.
Boom. Simon, thanks for joining me, brother. I really enjoyed this.
Me too, man. Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
100%.